Give it up for Pam, everybody. Wow, that's a great song. You too, right? Little Mary J. Blige right there. We are one church with many locations. And I thought before we get into the message, we got to do this. We got to have a little bit of fun. So I figure we'll do this. If you have been around this church for over 20 years, that means you were around the Seventh-day Adventist days when we rented the Seventh-day Adventist church a long time ago, 20 years plus. Stand up, all thousands of you. Let's see it. Stand up. All right. I got to see this. I got 2 over here. We got about 18 of us. Yeah. All right. Very good. All right. Get through this quickly, real quick. If you have been in this church from 11 to 19 years, those were our Civic Center days. Stand to your feet if you were around when we were in the Sevierville Civic Center. Woo! 28 of you, awesome, that's great. So you can be seated. If you started church when we opened up our Sevierville campus 10 years ago, let's go what, 10 years down to 5 years. You've been around this church for at least 5 years to 10 years at our Sevierville campus. Hold on, South Knoxville, Greensboro. At our Sevierville campus, would you stand up? 10 to 5 years, come on. Wow, look around the room. Awesome stuff. You may be seated. If you've been around the church for 2 to 5 years, you've been kind of newer to Pathways the last 2 to 5 years, stand up and be represented if it's like 2 to 5 years. Wow. Look around the room. If you've been around our Sevierville campus for less than 2 years, stand up if that's you. Less than 2 years, less than 2 years. Wow. Look around the room. If you've been a part of our church for 20 minutes, some of you are like, that's me. All right, if you are a part, we got to do this now, of our South Knoxville campus, stand to your feet and be recognized. Awesome. Hold up. I got spirit. Yes, I do. I got spirit. How about you? Yes. Woo! You guys are awesome. You may be seated. That's amazing, guys. Thanks so much for coming. You are amazing. Now, last but not least, if you are a part of our Greensboro campus, stand to your feet and make some noise. All right. Hold on. Okay, you guys turn around. Hold on. You guys turn around. Sevierville, listen, South Knoxville, they don't know if, they always ask me this, does Sevierville and South Knoxville like us? So do me a favor, turn around. Sevierville, South Knoxville, let them know you like them. How about that? You may be seated. Wow, that is amazing. Why would I do that? We're a part of one church. It's amazing how awesome it is. These moments, look at me real quick, are few and far between. Very few people are unified today about anything. If you have a family wedding, how many people have been to family weddings where there ain't no unity at the family wedding? People get upset. How about even this? Family funerals. You got sisters and brothers and fighting, and it's all kind of, we're not one, there's no warm and gooey feeling. Today, even in church, we're not even unified. Have you ever noticed that? These moments are few and far between when we can come together as one for life and celebration. It never works that way. It always works when it's tragedy. We only come together with death and destruction. Have you ever noticed that? You're like, Brent, you're depressing me. But it's true. I'm gonna prove it to you. I want you to sit back. I want you to be quiet. I want you to pay attention because I'm gonna take you on a journey. It's a 12-minute journey. I'm going to explain to you that we never really unify anymore with life and celebration and resurrection. But we are, as a country, as a community, we can tend to get unified really quickly when it's death and destruction and tragedy. You're like, I'm not so sure I agree with you. I'll show you what I mean. It was a beautiful spring day. was a gorgeous day. It was a normal day. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You never know what a day holds, though. That morning, you had a mother drop her daughter off at daycare and went ahead to go to work across the street, as she did every single day. A husband had just moved his family into town, and before they were going house hunting, he wanted to show his wife and his daughters his new office. He was excited about his new job and their new life. You had a young lady that just got married over the weekend, and now she was in the Social Security office, changing her last name. She was excited because now she was a wife. It was a normal day. It was a beautiful day. At 9:02 a.m., though, all of their lives changed.
About a third of the building has been blown away.
As a nation, at 9:02 a.m., we were unified.
Bombing in Oklahoma City was an attack on defenseless citizens.
We're never really unified when life and celebration occurs. It seems like we're so divided today. But as a nation, right here at this place, we were unified. Because on April the 19th, 1995, I wasn't quite 25 years old. A young man drove a Ryder truck up to a front door of a federal building, and a bomb was detonated, killing 168 innocent lives. Why were we unified as a nation? Because we saw our darkness condition again. We saw that once again we live in a world of sin, death, and disease, and evil reared its ugly head. And we were horrified, because if it could happen right here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, it could happen anywhere. How could this happen? The worst act of terrorism before 9/11, right here. Here at the Oklahoma City National Memorial. By the way, this memorial is done well. When you walk through these gates, and there's an eastern gate and there's a western gate, and it really is divided from your real everyday life into a place of remembrance, a place where you come and think about eternity. You think about things that can happen in life, and to remember those who lost their lives. This place kind of feels like a church. It feels like a cathedral. It's done really well because when we think of mass devastation, when we think of terrorism or school shootings, we tend to think of this just mass number of people, and we forget about the individual lives that were touched, that were changed, that were devastated. And here, the reason it kind of reminds me of a cathedral, and I think they did it on purpose, is there's 168 individual seats representing individual lives. 19 smaller seats representing 19 children that were dropped off at daycare that lost their lives. Innocent people just coming to work, just living life. I always think as a nation, and you come here and it's almost 23 years later and people are still leaving flowers, and you can when we got here, you could see people still coming, and we got here last evening and you could still see families that were touching some of these individual seats, and it's so affected them all of these years later. And I remember as a 24-year-old watching this unfold on television, how crazy, how could this possibly happen in our nation? And I remember us praying together, and as a nation we were unified together, but not because of life and celebration, but because of death and destruction. And how could this possibly happen? How do we put this the correct way? There's no way to really explain the impact of this place. The reflection pool behind us is here, and it says it best. It says this reflection pool, when you see your reflection in this pool, it's seeing someone who has been changed forever by what's happened right here. A hole in the side of a building united us as a nation.
Just as our nation stood together, stood united, really in horror, because of a bomb that blew a hole in the side of a federal building in Oklahoma City in 1995, we as a nation stood united because of what happened right here in this field. Again, it was an ordinary day. It was a beautiful morning. People were going to work as normal. But circumstances beyond their control forced 40 people to make a choice that would ultimately unite a nation. As 9:02 a.m. changed the life of everyone in Oklahoma City, this time it would be 8:42 a.m. that would change the life of 40 people and forever sadden a nation. A flight took off from Newark, New Jersey that was headed toward San Francisco when 4 hijackers took over United 93.
United 93, contact departure. United 93, good day.
We stand here in the field near Somerset, Pennsylvania. Actually, it's a place called Stony Creek, and trust me when I tell you, it's out here in the middle of nowhere. But 40 people banded together and made a choice. 40 people took the fight to the hijackers. 40 people fought for life, and we remember them right here. Again, it's sometimes difficult to unite when we talk about life and celebration. But when we talk about death and destruction, when we talk about something that could happen to any one of us, it's sometimes easier to come together. And as a nation, this field became our rallying cry. The rock behind me is a gravestone. It represents the place of impact where United 93 hit this field in Pennsylvania. More than likely, the plane's target would either have been the White House or the Capitol building. But because of what took place, we know because of the phone calls that were made from the passengers on United 93, they knew what was happening. These people, husbands of small children, husbands of unborn children. There were wives, there were grandparents, there were family members, there were friends. These people were us, decided to choose to fight. So they rushed the cockpit, and because of their actions, saved the lives of countless people, more than likely, and the plane would have probably hit one of our nation's most sacred buildings, which would have really demoralized our nation and just us as a people. Last year, Vice President Mike Pence came right here to this place to remember the 16th anniversary of 9/11 and what took place here in this field in Pennsylvania. And he gave a quote. He basically looked at family members and friends and he said, "You guys don't realize, but 16 years ago when 9/11 happened, I was in Congress, and for all intents and purposes, we thought this plane, United 93, was heading for the United States Capitol, the building that I was in." And he looked at family members and he looked at friends and he said, "Because of the heroes of United 93, my life more than likely was saved." And this was his quote. "Without regard to personal safety, they rushed forward to save lives.
I will always believe that I and many others in our nation's capital were able to go home that day, to hug our families, because of the courage and selflessness of the heroes of Flight 93.
A hole in the side of a federal building united our nation. A hole, a crater, an impact, which is marked by the stone behind me, united us as a nation. It really does make me think. Sometimes it takes an impact to make a difference.
East just turned to the east also. United 93, you hear Cleveland Center? United 93, do you still hear Cleveland? United 93, United 903, do you hear Cleveland?
At the end of February, I was in Denver, Colorado, with my son and a friend. Briggs is somewhere in this room, and the Parkland school shooting had just happened about 8 days before that. Every time I'm in Denver, I've gotten a chance to go. I've taken my wife, I've taken my daughter, and I've taken my son, and I always tend to go to Columbine High School. I always tend to go to the memorial. It's in Littleton, Colorado. If you've never been to Littleton, Colorado is like West Knoxville on steroids. It's beautiful. It's Greensboro to a whole nother level. Littleton's a place where all of us would really love to live. It's a great community. And to think about what happened at Columbine High School, there were other school shootings, but this was really the school shooting that unified us as a nation. So I told my son, I told his friend, I said, you know what, I want us to go once again to Columbine to see the memorial. Both Briggs and Mason were a little shaken because of the week prior, the shooting that took place in Parkland, Florida, and as a couple of teenagers that go to school, sometimes they're afraid. And so I always wanted to remind my son, I always want to go there and pay my respects because they've done a really good job at this memorial. And we changed our schedule around, and this is how God works. I'd already had this creative idea to take you to Oklahoma City and to take you to United 93 because there's a reason, and I'll get there in just a minute. And you're like, Brent, this is the weirdest Easter message I think I've ever heard, but just pay attention because we changed our schedule around so much. We pulled up to the Columbine Memorial. I've always been there, and there's never anybody there. You park up in a community park and you walk around the high school, and it's up back behind the high school, and it's done well, but it's a lot of years later, so there's no one there. So imagine my surprise when my son and I, and here's a picture of my son and I, we walked up on a group of people. That group of people included Rachel Scott's parents. You might remember Rachel Scott. She was one of the two girls that the two gunmen looked at. One of the two girls, her and Cassie Bernal, and said, hey, are you a God person? God's not going to save you. And Rachel Scott was killed at Columbine High School. And you can see the silver-haired lady, that was Rachel Scott's mother. And there was another man standing there. And this group fascinated me. I just listened in for a while. The boys went around and looked at the memorial, but I was kind of an eavesdropper. I was just like 20 feet away from this conversation, and they're thinking, who is this weirdo standing behind them? And I just was listening in on the impact of this conversation. Rachel Scott's parents were talking about that day. And you could almost feel like it was yesterday, although it was so many years ago. And I had the opportunity, one of the other gentlemen was standing there, his name was Frank DeAngelis. This man here was the principal of Columbine High School when the shooting took place. And he decided, check this out as a principal, I love our educators. If you're an educator in this room, raise your hand. If you work in a school in any way, shape, or form, I love you guys. You are unsung heroes. Can we give it up for our educators? But check this out, Frank DeAngelis made this commitment. He said every person who was in preschool when Columbine happened, he was gonna stay and become the principal to make sure all of those who were in preschool graduated high school. And he stayed and fulfilled that commitment to make the community whole. And he said, I know, Brent, that most people think of Columbine and tragedy, but I promise you that our community is built. And he grabbed me right there. He's such a force. He looked at me, he grabbed kind of my shoulders and he looked at me, and I told him what I did for a living. And I said, Frank, I don't know if this is God ordained or not, but I was really looking for a moment to kind of take our people at Easter out of this eternal moment into something that, you know what, all of us can relate to. And he grabbed me, look at me real quick, and he looked at me and he said these words. He goes, Brent, if it wasn't for my faith in Jesus Christ, I would have never made it through these last 20 years. Oklahoma City was a perfectly blue sky day. September the 11th, 2001 was a beautiful day. Columbine, it was a beautiful day. Parkland, the school shooting that just took place in February, a beautiful day. I think about it, I can take it personal. The day just 2 years ago that my dad came to my house And he was just wanting to hug his grandson because my dog died. It was a perfect, beautiful, sunny day. What do these places teach us? Listen to me, look at me, no distractions. Help me out real quick, all of us back to the front. We are in this together for a moment here. What do they teach us? Number one, you need to know this, it's important. You never know what a day holds. And number two, it does take an impact to make a difference. It seems like we as a nation, we as a community, even we as a church, sometimes we are so divided. We can never be unified. It takes an impact, it takes tragedy, it takes death, and it takes destruction. It takes us once again to see our darkness condition. And in our humanity, we can boast about everything. We can remove anything. It seems like we're so good at so many things, but there's one thing that we cannot remove. And whether it's Oklahoma City, whether it's Parkland, whether it's Columbine, whether it's 9/11, or what other tragedies coming our way, there's one thing that we cannot remove, and we cannot remove our darkness. We have a darkness condition. This room, I don't like it that much because of the darkness. It seems like we're sitting in the dark. They didn't build house lights the right way in this room. Leave it up for the city. Yeah, shh, right? But it sometimes plays into this moment because Easter, once again, we have to come front and center with our darkness condition. So can you imagine our surprise when you read these words from God's word? John chapter 3, verse 16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. But keep reading. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to what? Save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Verse 19, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. It's a catch-22, isn't it? That, you know what, we all are horrified when darkness rears its ugly head and we're like, how can this possibly happen in our community? How can this happen? But yet so many of us, and maybe this is you, and I'm not here to condemn you, but I'm here to get you into a moment. If you can't get into an eternal moment watching what you just watched, these people were us. They were just going about work as normal. Every day was normal. You never know what a day holds. A lot of us tend to like darkness because we're afraid we're going to be exposed. John chapter 3, verse 20, everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. Darkness. I figured we would have a little fun, and I would go back to one of my favorite illustrations. I brought my trusty flashlight. This flashlight's powerful, man. Sometimes darkness has a way of turning the tables on us, and let me explain. This is a good one. If you've heard this illustration, you'll enjoy this, but if you haven't, this is a good one. This is one of my favorites. There was a burglar who was checking out your neighborhood. He was looking around to see if you went away for spring break. And so he looked at cars that were packing suitcases, and he was pretty savvy, and he saw around that some of the houses were empty, so he decided to wait till it was dark. And then he went up to the house and he neatly picked the lock. He went inside and it was pitch dark. And he simply shouted out into the darkness, "Is anybody there?" And to his horror, somebody responded back to him. You might know where I'm going with this. Because a little voice simply said this, ready? "I see you, and Jesus sees you." The burglar got a little freaked out. Is anybody there? I see you, and Jesus sees you. He begins to panic. He takes his flashlight. He looks around, and finally, to his relief, he sees a parrot's cage. A little parrot's in the cage, and the little parrot is just reciting the line, I see you, and Jesus sees you. Oh, thank God. He starts laughing out loud. He flicks the lights back on. And to his horror, as he looked down from the parrot's cage, at the bottom of the parrot's cage was a vicious German shepherd, to which the parrot simply says, attack, Jesus, attack. Bring that picture back up. Ryan Robinette picked that out. What's wrong with you, Ryan? That's like Cujo right there. What is up with that? What's the moral of the story? Everybody look at me. There's a theological moral to this story. Sometimes darkness can bite you in the butt. But think of it this way. Easter is about Jesus knowing the death and destruction that darkness can bring. Many people stay in darkness because they don't want to be exposed, but the trap is that life begins to feel like midnight, walls begin to close in around you, and hopelessness takes hold. Darkness can overtake you. So if you read the resurrection accounts, John chapter 20, verse 1, check it out. It says this, early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark. Matthew 28, 5 and 6 says this, the angel came to the women and said, ready? Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus Christ who was crucified. But he is what? He is not here, he is risen. So here's my whole premise, my whole message. A hole in the side of a federal building united us all. A hole, an impact in the ground in Somerset, Pennsylvania united us all. But there is a hole in the side of the earth in Jerusalem that I've actually been in, and there is no one in that tomb. And all it takes is one step toward Jesus to remove your darkness and live in light, to remove fear and live in hope. Check this verse of scripture out. John chapter 12, verses 35 and 36, Jesus replied, my light will shine for you just a little while longer. Walk in the light while you can, so the darkness will not overtake you. Those who walk in the darkness cannot see where they are going. Put your trust in the light while there is still time. Then you will become children of the light. The last 3 weeks I've been asking this question, and it started with Jesus at Caesarea Philippi asking Peter, hey, who do you say that I am? He asked the disciples, who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you are Christ. You are the Son of living God. And I asked this, I'm gonna ask you this. Everybody in this room, no one is immune to this. You have to answer this question. You're like, Brent, no I don't. I'm gonna sit here and not answer this question. Sure you are. You're gonna answer this question one way or the other. What will you do with Jesus Christ? What are you gonna do with Christ? That empty tomb. Put the picture back up, Mike, of that tomb. I want you to do me a favor as we close this service. I want you to put yourself in front of this empty tomb. Not the world, just you. Which way are you drawn to go? Look at me, listen, no one leaving. Please don't leave. Don't mess up this moment. This is a moment that's gonna matter, so I'm almost done. Just hang out. Put yourself in front of this tomb, just you, nobody else but you. Which way are you gonna go? A lot of us in our world, you know what? You're gonna look in this tomb and you're gonna say it's empty. You're gonna be like, I'm not so sure about Jesus. I don't know what's really going on. I'm not really a religious person. And you're gonna look in that empty tomb and you're gonna go, well, that's not for me. So effectively, look at me. This is what you are doing. You're walking in that tomb, you're sealing the door, you're sealing your fate. You're gonna walk through the rest of your life hopeless. Darkness will overtake you. You're gonna be the type when you see a shooting happen at a school and we're all like, how could this happen? What's going on in our world? The government better do something. Listen, we have a darkness condition. We live in a world of sin, death, and disease. And too many of us easily walk in that tomb and seal the door shut and we just live in emptiness. We live in hopelessness. Or maybe today you can peek in the tomb and see that it's empty, and you can know that Jesus Christ is alive. The very Son of God walked the earth. He died on a cross. He rose again, and he is not in that tomb. And so you know what? You and I don't have to stay in that tomb. We can walk out of that tomb into a resurrected life by faith, full of hope. I hate to say this, ready? I hate to say it, but I'm going to do it. Ready? Here we go. Because United 93, the book that I read a long time ago called Let's Roll, a guy named Todd Beamer was on that flight. I love that little slogan, and I'm going to use that slogan right now. As for me, I peeked in the tomb. The tomb is empty. I've walked out into a resurrected life. Am I afraid sometimes? Yes, but because he lives, I can face tomorrow. That's how I roll. How about you? How about you? Do me a favor, would you bow your heads if you would? Just as a moment of focus. All the way to the back, I see you guys. Thanks so much for coming. Just everybody bow your heads. I just need to give you a moment. You're like, Brent, I hate to say it, but what I saw today really bothered me. I see so much hurt, so much devastation, so much tragedy. And I get, as a pastor, I get what you're saying. We don't unite under life and celebration. We typically just unite when death and tragedy occurs. Let's all understand this. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son that you and I might have life. Everybody as quiet as you can, as prayerful as you can, heads bowed and eyes closed. Please, no distractions. These moments matter to me. Yes, we can come to church. It's Easter. It's awesome. We can come together and celebrate together, but this is what I'm after, because I have a feeling a lot of us are walking around in darkness. We're afraid. We have no idea what tomorrow holds. And when we see something like 93, Oklahoma City, Columbine, Parkland, we see things like, man, that's me. That could be me. That could be me dropping off my kid. That could be me getting on an airplane, going on vacation. That could be me just taking the business trip. That could be me in the Social Security. That could be me. Listen, you never know what a day holds, but God sent his only Son that, you know what, you can have hope for tomorrow, no matter what comes your way. And I don't know about you, listen to me, but I need that in my life. So forget the sermon, forget preaching. I'm asking you, what are you gonna do with Jesus Christ? Some of you, you've been trying to live your life the way you wanna live it. You've been exposed right here, right now, by the light of Christ, and you have to make a choice. You're standing in front of the tomb. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna walk in that tomb and seal yourself shut? Or are you gonna walk out of that tomb saying, you know what, because Jesus Christ lives, I can walk out of that tomb into a resurrected life. I can put my faith and my hope and my trust in Christ, and I'm going to live instead of just survive. I'm gonna have hope instead of just be afraid. I wanna walk into the light instead of just living in darkness. With your heads bowed and your eyes closed, just between you and me, if you're like, Brent, you know what? I haven't been able to really answer that question, what to do with Christ, but I want to accept Christ as my Lord and Savior. I want to believe in Jesus Christ, that he is God's Son and he gave his life for me. If that's you, I just want you to stand up, if you will. Stand to your feet. I'm putting you in this moment, and I need you to take this moment. All in this room, just stand to your feet. It's gonna take guts, but anything in life takes guts. Some of you, if you're sitting down and you've never accepted Christ, this is your moment. If you don't stand to your feet, you're just walking in the tomb, sealing the door, saying, I'm gonna walk out of here as hopeless as I walked in the door. It's on you. If you have never accepted Jesus Christ, church, if you're in this room and maybe somebody invited you and you're like, Brent, I wasn't really prepared for this, but I live in such hopelessness. Stand to your feet, accept Christ. The greatest decision that you'll ever make is to acknowledge and accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Savior. I'm gonna give you a moment. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot. I want you to do me a favor. Those of you standing, I want you to mean business. Real quick, where you're at, I want you to, come on, stay standing, don't sit down. I want you to get out of your seat and I want you to come forward. Real quick, come on. Nobody looking around, heads bowed, eyes closed. Get out of your seat and come forward. Come forward. We're gonna sing a song to close called Come to the Altar. Are you hurting? Are you broken within? I want you to come forward. Even if you didn't stand up and come forward. It's time to accept Christ. Time is short. What are you going to do with Jesus Christ? It is time to accept Him. It's time to acknowledge that Jesus Christ, the very Son of God, gave His life for you. He is not dead today, He is alive. So whatever happens to our tomorrow, because He lives, we can face tomorrow. I gotta have that in my life. If you don't have that in your life, man, I'm telling you, I don't know how you're gonna leave here walking into a crazy world in which we live, because darkness is everywhere. If you're standing to your feet, come forward. Even if you didn't stand, come forward. In this song, as we sing it, I want you just to come forward. This song begs you and I to come forward, to come to the altar. You see, we sang the U2 song a while ago. It said, love is a temple, love is a higher law. That's not true. Jesus Christ came and ripped the veil of the temple, that veil that separated God and man, and now we can go straight to God because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. Love is not a law. Love is not a rule or a regulation. Love is a relationship with Jesus Christ. Church, that's what it's all about in life. God's one and only Son came for you. God, you see the men and women that have come forward. Many of us that have seated, some of us still need to just come forward. I'm praying for this moment that your Spirit will just convict them. The greatest decision that they'll ever make in life is to step forward, to accept the light of Jesus Christ while there is still time in a hopeless world in which we live. Jesus Christ is our only hope. I'm a living testament to that. He's our only hope. We might have heard those words before, but we might not know them. So it's time for us to come to the altar. It's time for us to come to the altar. As a church, those of us that are Christians, we once again get the opportunity to come to the altar. Why? Because of Easter, because of the resurrection day, because of what Jesus Christ has done, that we don't have to have a priest interceding on our behalf, but we can have a relationship directly with you. We can come to the altar, all because of what Jesus Christ has done. May we as one celebrate that.